Welcome back to Venture Capital TV, VCTV from LaToken. I'm the host and the moderator of the episode today, where we're going to discuss investments in alternative food protein. This is a very sort of unique sort of topic that we are discussing. In the sense, we haven't discussed or sort of focused on this topic before. So we have experts to share their views and insights on this topic today. So basically, before I start introducing the speakers of the panel, let me just introduce myself. My name is Sonny Mohanty. I host and moderate VCTV, and I'm coming back after a break, but obviously I was missing VCTV, and I'm glad and happy to be back. Let's have a round of intro of speakers. Hello, hi Vandana. Hi Gautam, joining us for the very first time. So let's have a quick round of intro. Gautam, you joined us for the first time. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on. Let me take a moment to introduce myself. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I have spent my life building startups in Silicon Valley. I started 2 companies, both of which have since been acquired. Since then, since the sale of my last company in 2016, I became very interested in sustainability and specifically in animal welfare, which led me to alternative proteins. So today, I am the managing partner at Good Startup, which is a venture firm that's focused on alternative proteins. We are based in Singapore and write checks of $250,000 to $1 million per company, and we have 12 investments.
Wow. All right. More questions coming your way, Gautam. Stay tuned. Vandana, over to you, please.
So, hi everybody, and thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be on your show, Sonny, always. And I want to thank the entire team of LaToken for having these kind of shows, because it engages people globally and it gives us a lot of insights on different sectors, which many would have not known before. Coming to introduce myself, I had my own family office in Singapore and Jakarta. I worked as an investment banker and advisor to family offices and angel investors in Jakarta, Indonesia, helping startups from a diverse background, from fintech, B2B tech, all the way to consumer startups. And after 15 years of staying in Singapore and Jakarta, I came back to India. I did investments and for a bit, then returned to advisory. That is when Convanto was founded. Today, Convanto is most well-known investment banks in India, led by a female founder. I'm also a venture advisor with Loyal VC, the INSEAD-led Canadian VC fund, having a core portfolio of over 160 investments in more than 35 countries. I'm also a partner with GSD Venture Studios, a Silicon Valley-based venture builder. Over the years, I've arranged funding for startups and growth stage companies in diverse sectors like edtech, fintech, consumer, B2C, B2B, agri-tech, health tech, food tech, disruptive and deep tech, as well as non-tech sectors. I would recommend all of you to have a look at my website for the wonderful testimonials written by my clients. I've been selected as one of the top 10 women leaders in Wealth Management 2021. My brand also, Convanto, comes under the top 10 women entrepreneur brands. My expert opinion is sought by leading business news channels and publications like VCTV, Business World, and I've participated in 160 talks all over the world. I'm connected with 300 plus investors globally. We are sector agnostic, and typically we do $1 million to $50 million. And once again, thank you for having me here.
Fantastic. Thank you, Vandana, for that, long yet very informative introduction. It's good to know all the details. Thank you. Tushar, I see Tushar just joined us. Are you here, Tushar? I just see a blank screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to fix the camera. I'll just be back. I'll be back.
Okay, sure. While we wait for Tushar to come back up, So let's just start with Gautam, over to you. So I just want to know, how did the market of this alternative food proteins do in the year 2020? Because that was the year that obviously changed everything, right? And what can we expect from this industry in the coming years?
Well, I think 2020 was a very challenging year for the food industry. Obviously, particularly food service was very, very heavily impacted. But when you look at alternative proteins as a sector within food, you're really seeing the industry as a whole thriving. And the reason for that is that globally you have what is really known as the flexitarian movement. Consumers are basically saying that I want to be healthier, I want to eat more plants. And so around the world, if you look, that number is about 20%. In the most advanced market for alternative proteins, the US, that number jumps to 47%. When you look at millennials in the next generation, that number goes well over 50%. So when you have this type of adoption, even though alternative proteins are only about 20 billion of the global animal agriculture market of about 2 trillion, they are growing extremely rapidly. So there'll be 10x in the next 10 years and another 10x in the following 20 years. So it's an industry going from 20 billion to 2 trillion in 30 years.
Thank you, Gautam. Thanks for that opening remarks. I just see Gary has joined us from a different, probably, location.
I'm in my living room, and I got Nikola Tesla's autograph behind me. I'm just sitting here. My wife's in the other room, so
okay.
She's sitting there with the dog. Anyhow, great to be here today.
Good morning, Gary. We were taking introductions on the first question, but let's just hear it from you, please.
Yeah. So great to be here. Great to see some familiar faces. My name's Gary Fowler. I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor. I've done 17 companies, been involved in 2 unicorns. I was on the original management team at Click Software, sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Yva.ai, an AI HR tech company that I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. Love artificial intelligence and quantum. Published my latest article in Forbes yesterday on infobesity and the challenge that we have with that. I speak at the United Nations October 1st again on technology as a tool for peace as part of the General Assembly. I just, love tech, love artificial intelligence. I'm the CEO, co-founder, and president of GSD Get Shit Done Venture Studios. We're now in 37 countries worldwide. We believe that intellectual capacity is evenly spread, but opportunities aren't. It's great to be here. And sorry I've been a little behind this week. I had some surgery on Monday, so it's slowed me down for a few days, but I'm back again.
Oh, I see you doing good, Gary. I hope everything is okay.
Yeah, everything's fine. I just, I had to get it done, and here I am.
Glad to have you on VCTV. So are you something?
What's that?
I said I'm very glad to have you on VCTV.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here. It's family hour.
Yes, indeed it is. So I just want to repeat the question I asked Gautam and Vandana. So because obviously 2020 was the year of the pandemic, the global pandemic. So how did the market of this particular sector, alternative food proteins, do in year 2020? And what do we expect from this sector in 2020 and beyond 2020? So why suddenly, I see like a lot of, especially in Singapore, I see a lot of sudden boom in this market because I read a lot of news. So Gary, what's your thoughts about that?
Well, so let's paint a picture. So the population of planet Earth over this century will go from 8.1 billion to 13 billion. But here's where we have the challenges. By 2050, we're going to have to double the amount of food on the planet Earth to be able to survive. We won't be able to feed enough people. At the same time, 26% of the pollution is caused by farm animals. So we can't double the amount of farm animals that are out there. We've got to look at our alternatives. Now, I mean, this is this century. Look at over the next 250 to 300 years where we're going to be as a planet. We had better go down through and course correct The one thing the pandemic has shown us that we can communicate digitally, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we're aware of the problems and challenges, and we start to address those early. I just wrote the article for the United Nations about this, just so you know. So I actually, putting my money where my mouth is, and I believe we need to look at technology for peace, food technology, technologies for global warming, and it can't be talk anymore. We got to bind together as a human race to go down through it. And it's not like this is a utopia. This is something we either do or we become extinct. And so this thing with food protein concerns me. We see more and more companies coming out with alternative protein. I mean, I don't know if you've tasted it lately, but it's a whole lot better than it was before. We're going to see more and more of it. It's going to happen naturally. It's going to happen very slowly. It's going to come in. Protein will come in. You won't even know that it's replaced because it'll be that good, right? In the early levels with some of these alternative proteins, they didn't taste that good, but they will taste better and better. So it's going to happen. There's not much we can do about it. For startups out there and investors, get ready and start investing in those companies because we're going to need them to be able to feed the planet.
Thank you, Gary, for that explanation. Absolutely. Back in the days, you can make the difference, but you're totally on the point. Thank you, Gary. Vandana?
So, even though the COVID-19 pandemic, crippled markets in 2020, the alternative protein sector saw an increasing rise in funding. And a new report, revealed that 2020 was a record period of investment for alternative protein companies across the world. Globally, the sector saw a net investment of 3.5 billion in 2020, which was thrice the amount of 1 billion from 2019. And in 2018, the sector had raised $694 million. Between 2010 to 2020, the alternative protein companies over the world have raised approximately 6 billion, and last year accounted for half of these investments. We can definitely expect the industry to grow. Now, in general, pea protein and cultured meat show the most promise for market growth over the coming 5 to 10 years. And plants are expected to be the largest source of alternative protein due to their limited environmental impact and healthy perception by customers. The economics of plant protein production are also, advantages because it avoids the feed to food conversion loss typical of other protein forms. For example, insect protein loss ratio is the lowest among animal proteins at 1.7 to 1.0, and it is still higher than plant protein to make them competitive with the amino acid profile in animal proteins. However, with the projected growth of meat consumption in major developed markets such as China, animal protein will likely maintain a significant market share.
Right.
Now, this type of protein has advantages. Poultry, pork, and dairy-based proteins are relatively efficient in feed proteins and offer products and tastes and that are familiar to most consumers.
Right.
Nonetheless, producers should not discount alternative proteins as they do have the potential to capture a share of the growing protein market. Companies are already investing in alternative protein technology and will continue to do so in the coming years. And players that can market high-end products made from soya protein are likely to capture the largest margins.
Right.
For CPG companies to win market share in the long term, they must have their bets and invest in capabilities needed to meet their marketing strategy and the target consumer segments. And overall, alternative proteins present an exciting development for the entire food industry.
Thank you. Thank you, Vandana. So, Gautam, I have a question for you. So how did this market I hear a little bit of echo, but anyways. So how? So basically, no. I was just want to ask, how big is this alternative protein market, and how big is this opportunity? What does the product market fit look like for alternative protein products for consumers?
Uh, when you look out at the holy grail for the alternative protein market, it really comes down to taste parity and price parity. The saying in the food industry is taste is king, price is queen. So the question is, how long and what type of resources will the industry, how long will it take and what type of resources will the industry need to get there? It is very important to recognize how early it is in the alternative protein space. So animal agriculture today, which is fundamentally what alternative protein is disrupting, is a $2 trillion industry across meat, seafood, dairy, and eggs. Now, as Gary mentioned, when you go out to 2050 and you have a population north of 10 billion and a substantially larger middle class by percentage, meat consumption doubles. So today, alternative proteins are about $20 billion in size, so about 1% of the market. In 10 years, they'll go to 200 billion, about 10% of the market. And most experts say that in 2050, when you reach that larger level of meat consumption, a larger population, we believe alternative proteins will get to about 30 to 60% share. So you're looking at roughly a $1 to $2 trillion opportunity. And so we are right at the beginning of a massive 30-year transformation of the food system. You know, I started my first company in 1996, and I fundamentally believe this is that 1995 moment for alternative proteins. Imagine sitting there in 1995 when the internet was getting going and saying, I want to do something about it.
Wow, 1996.
Yes, I felt it was important for me to date myself. Yes, that's correct.
Gary.
And I did the first e-commerce consulting companies on the internet in 1998. So I've been around the block a few times too.
There you go.
By the way, Gary, Gautam is from Silicon Valley originally. So
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's great. Fantastic. Yeah, I'll be back in Palo Alto in 3 weeks.
Oh, wow. I'll be there in 1 week.
Oh, no kidding. Will you be there in 3 weeks?
I will.
Oh, we should get together. I'll be back.
Absolutely. This is what these podcasts are great for, is to book these social engagements.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, the challenge is, it's interesting because, you know, we talk about these alternative proteins. I was on the panel in the UN a month ago, and I was on a panel on AR and VR as a tool to combat violent extremism and terrorism. I said, guys, I think we got this wrong. I think we need to look at things differently. We got to look at how we can make the food supply a whole lot better, because if you think terrorism is bad now, wait till we get to 2050 and people don't have enough food. They're going to be insane. I said, we better go down through and make some of those changes today. I mean, this is, you know, not just global warming, right? I mean, we talk about, you take when you start to vector in the global warming, average temperatures could go up almost 9 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of this century. I mean, a whole lot of things are happening. You got people talking. Go ahead.
No, you're so right. I was agreeing with you. Please go on.
And you know, those are the kind of things that really concern me. And you know, we talk about. I mean, was it yesterday? They're talking about bringing woolly mammoths back so that they can graze on the art. I mean, it's like there's a lot of stuff going on, but we got to focus on. You know, we got to bind together his humanity, and just like we're doing here in VCTV, seriously. And we got to figure out how to solve these problems. And we better course correct, because nothing good. We will be extinct, in my opinion, in 300 years if we don't do something. It's that big of a problem, right? People don't realize. I did a project with a Dr. Irving Crick, and he was 80-some years old. He had been a student at Albert Einstein at Princeton. And I remember Dr. Crick did a long-range weather forecasting model, nonlinear. And we were talking about some of the problems that we're going to. This is in 1993, right? And people say, "Oh, this is BS. It's not real. He was talking about super hurricanes, speeds of 300 miles an hour, the Gulf Stream stopped, and then, right, and look where we are today. It started. So we can bind together. I have hope in humanity to bind together to solve these issues with protein and how to be able to feed. But we got to democratize the opportunity and help each other. Africa's got 1.3 billion people. Latin America's got 647 million people. We got to go around and help each other. We got to figure out ways, let's not destroy each other. Let's help each other. Instead of putting the money in these offensive technology, let's figure out how we can support each other. And not in an entitlement way, but a way that it's a win-win for everybody, like creating jobs, right? And we create jobs, people can buy those kind of proteins, those alternative proteins to feed their families.
Absolutely. Great points there, Gary. Thank you so much for sharing that. Vandana, coming over to you. So what do you think about the market in terms of the size of the market in terms of India subcontinent? Like, how big is the market there? And what does the product market fit look like for the regions that you are investing into?
So, alternative proteins are small but fast-growing segment of the overall protein marketplace. Currently, alternative proteins account for less than 2% of protein sold, and they will not be challenging traditional proteins like beef, chicken, pork, and seafood anytime soon. And in fact, in 2018, meat and seafood consumption in the US set all-time records, even while these industries receive significant, media scrutiny. So the data indicates that we are growing and consuming more traditional proteins than ever. And while it means that there are increasing their consumption for plant-based alternatives, it does not indicate any decrease in the traditional protein industry. So we can look at Licious. Licious is from India. It's very popular, traditional, fresh meat and seafood startup in India. And it has underwent a 5x growth in a year itself. It has raised $200 million in its Series F round recently and has transformed the food tech startup ecosystem in India by deploying the funds towards more investments in tech-led supply chains transformation, quality improvement, and customer experience elevation. However, the growth in the alternative protein is driven by consumers showing an interest in eating more plant-based foods for health and lifestyles. Reasons across all demographic groups, startups, restaurants, and retailers are responding to this growth in demand with premium priced offerings. The growth in this industry can also not be undermined as and more people are adopting vegan and vegetarian diets, as you can see. It is a clear sign that the rising demand for sustainable food by consumers, and moreover, alternative proteins also do not cause public health risks, which was an important factor which determines investors' decisions during the global pandemic. So I think there's a lot of scope in this. There are a lot of protein, plant-based powders that are here in India as well for hair growth, for skin tightening, and so many others.
I think I want to know the difference from Gautam. So what is the difference between plant-based alternative protein investments when Vandana says traditional food protein startups? Is it like when you say traditional, it's like means the animal proteins, and what's the difference and how big are the markets?
So traditionally, you saw a lot of protein come from animal products, where specifically they're referring to meat, seafood, dairy, and eggs. This is the market that's 2.1 trillion in size today, with every number going up and to the right, with the global demand for protein increasing for the reasons that we talked about. Alternative proteins are coming in and disrupting this using a range of technologies. So the first technologies are plant-based, where you're basically using plant ingredients and creating protein that looks and tastes like meat or eggs. The second technology is where you're actually utilizing microorganisms that can be engineered so that they secrete meat or protein, or that can be consumed as a biomass. We also are now looking at growing animal cells outside the animal. So using cell-based technologies, which are also known as clean meat or cultured meat or cultivated meat. So this disruption that's taking place is being done by a range of technologies, and each of them have their advantages and disadvantages. What's really both compelling and confusing is that these technologies are being combined to create hybrid products, so that you might, for example, have real animal cells being grown but combined with plants. So you get the taste of meat but the nutritional profile of a plant. And so very, very interesting things going on in the alternative protein world.
Wow. Thank you, Gautam. So in terms of technology disrupting this space, Gary, maybe I can just take this from you because you are the tech person, AI person, quantum computing. So what technologies are disrupting this space, basically?
First of all, discovery, right? Discovering what kind of, as Gautam has said, what types of protein are going to taste most applicable to taste like protein, right? Some of these proteins in the beginning had tasted odd. I mean, I remember when they had Boca burgers, if you remember, Gautam, they had these alternative proteins. They just didn't taste like it. So the question is how to get the taste so it's right, so we accept it. How to get the protein at the right level so it's sufficient. And at the same time, if we talk about, some of these cell-based proteins that are essentially, animals, how do we find that type of technology to be able to replicate those cells? I mean, but this isn't just happening there. This is happening everywhere. In med tech, how to make replacement organisms for your body too, right? It's interesting. They're like transportable models. So we're just on the verge of a whole lot of technologies coming out. How does AI? Because AI allows us to look at a lot of data a lot faster than we've ever been able to do before.
Yeah, and it's an excellent point that you're making. I think about computational approaches that can be utilized to accelerate innovation, because we're already starting to see that in the alternative protein space. To what you said, Sonny, it's interesting because what Gary was saying about the Boca burger and so on, the previous generation largely catered, it turns out, to vegans and vegetarians. They just wanted burgers, but they couldn't have the regular things, so they would go and buy these. These new products, like Impossible and Beyond, are catered toward meat eaters. Vegetarians and vegans actually don't like them very much because they taste like meat, and a lot of them weren't eating meat to begin with. So if you look, for example, today, 92 to 93% of Beyond and Impossible's customers are meat eaters.
Right.
And in blind taste tests, half the people in the US can't tell the difference between the Impossible burger and real meat. So we are in a very, very different world than we were with these alternatives just a few years ago, as Gary's pointing out.
So I just want to know, is this mainstream now? Like plant-based alternative protein or animal-based alternative protein. Are these new products mainstream, and are there any challenges in terms of pricing, or is it a seamless kind of transition from the traditional world to the new world?
I mean, the thing is, it's happening now as we speak. It's like when technology comes into our lives, it happens slowly, right? It stopped it slowly. And so we're seeing it happen. I mean, you go into the grocery store today and I mean, you see it, you see alternative proteins there now, right? So it's not like you have to, before you had to look for it. Now you can find it, it's in front of you, so it's going to happen slowly, but as we said, it's got to happen, right? And we won't even, people were being resistant to it in the beginning, but now it'll just happen. It'll gradually happen and people accept it. Just watch, right? It's like bottled water. I remember you couldn't even buy bottled water. And now
Yeah.
the situation is everybody's got it, right? But that's a natural occurrence because water is going to be sold in barrels because of water wars, right? So it's going to happen, and it's already happened. I went to Walmart, the Walmart superstore, and I happened to be in there shopping for rice cauliflower because I love it. And I looked, and there was some alternative protein that they already had some dishes out, and it just normal, right? So it's going to happen. It's going to happen more and more every year. So invest now.
Invest now. But so, what are the challenges do you see? Especially the start, because this is something not like you build a technology without understanding the industry. So Gautam, just wanted to ask, like, obviously you are investing specifically into this sector, I guess only. So what kind of challenges are you seeing this startups are facing that you can address on the show?
That's a great question because the industry as a whole is very optimistic. There's a lot of grand projections out there, but like anything in an early phase, there are a lot of risks. There's a certain fragility to the industry, and I think we have to be very careful about that, and startups need to be very cognizant of that. So first and foremost, I think there are bona fide technical challenges. To get to taste parity and price parity, we need to innovate. And without that innovation, we will not get to that holy grail. And if we don't get there, then the mainstream consumer will not be interested in these products. And that's why today it's just 1% of the market. And for it to get to the mainstream part of the market, we have to get to taste and price parity. And to do that, we have to we have to innovate. We can't do it with just what we have today. The second set of challenges, I think, for these companies are to educate consumers. Consumers really need to understand that these are products that, while they are new, they are safe to eat. They, in many ways, have health benefits. They are free of a lot of contaminants or antibiotics or bacteria that you might find in conventional animal alternatives. And so I think there's a lot of education that needs to take place. And on the production side, there's a lot of scale up that needs to happen. And finally, on the regulatory side, governments have to step up and clear these products for consumption, especially with technologies like cell-based meat, where animal cells are being grown outside the animal. Today, you can just do that only in one place, which is Singapore. And there's a number of governments working very hard to get there, but we haven't gotten there yet. So there is a whole range of risks for these startups to manage, because at the end of the day, these are food companies, and food is something that is very personal to us. It impacts our health. It's wrapped up in our culture. And I think we have to be very cognizant that this is something we have to be really careful with in terms of how it's brought to market.
So on that point, Gautam, it's a good startup. Is it only investing into the startups, or you also bring in some kind of expertise in helping them advise these kind of sort of challenges that the market has, and how to overcome these hurdles?
So in addition to supporting these startups with capital, our hope is to be able to help the entrepreneurs in a number of ways. So my co-founder Jayesh and I have been operators all of our lives. And so the idea of going in and helping an entrepreneur with IP protection, organization design, recruiting, financial planning, fundraising strategy, a range of these issues, I think that is something that we are really delighted to do. And we believe it's very critical for the company to be operationally buttoned up for it to see success. The other aspect where we find we can be helpful is that we are a fund sitting in Asia, but we have global connects. Obviously, I spent most of my life in Silicon Valley, but sitting here in Asia and Singapore, which really has become the hub for alternative proteins across the continent. It really is the gateway to Asia now for alternative proteins. When a food company, as it grows and scales, thinks about the different aspects of its business, what's going to happen through its supply chain, how it will do R&D, where it will do manufacturing and scale up, where it will distribute its products to end consumers. It would be surprising if Asia didn't play some part in that strategy. So the idea of sitting here in Asia we are in a position to help companies globally to enter this part of the world, whether it's for their supply chain or R&D or manufacturing or distribution. And of course, the ecosystem here in Asia is nascent. So we have an opportunity to help startups here in Asia to bring operational best practices from around the globe. So that is how we hope to help.
Right.
But really, we try to help in the way entrepreneurs want us to help.
Okay, perfect. On that note, going global, Vandana, I'll come to you with the risks from the geographies that you invest in. But Gary, going global is obviously a GST thing. So first of all, I'd like to know what kind of challenges have you come across besides what Gautam said, price points, regulations, what kind of challenges have you sort of come across in this sector?
Yeah, so finding those types of companies that really focus on it, we haven't seen them in the. I haven't seen those in places like Africa. We haven't seen many. I'm not saying they don't exist, but I see a lot of fintech companies. So it's really changing the mindset. But I look at it as really a three-part process. One is, first of all, you have to open up the ecosystem and start to talk about how to create startups. Second thing is you educate them about technologies that are not easier, but something that they understand. For instance, fintech in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And then the situation is you can move forward. From my perspective, right, I'm sure that we may each have different opinions, but in my opinion, it's really the third level. So in a more sophisticated level in some ways, when you need technology to be able to do it. Some of these fintech companies, you can do that. If you're creating a Patricia or a Flutterwave, you have some of those technologies that there's not as capital intensive in some ways. So, but it's going to happen, and places like the continent of Africa is going to need it. I mean, there's 1.3 billion people, and a lot of folks under the age of 30. A majority of the population in some cases. So we've got to come down through, and we've got to plan now for the future, because, like I said, nothing good's going to happen if you think it's bad now, right? With wars and that kind of thing, when people can't eat, it's going to be a whole different story. So plan now. Mother Teresa said it's not about stopping war, it's about pro-peace. Let's figure out how we can work together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Education is very important as well. And obviously, Africa has to catch up on this sector, especially. Thank you so much. Vandana, coming over to you. What kind of challenges, like the risks you see that the startups face in this space?
See, the traditional food protein investment is still very high. Now, the alternative protein industry is very dynamic. Advancing technologies, decreasing cost curves, changing regulations, and increasing consumer adoption will lead to substantial gains in the market share for alternative proteins over the coming decade. Now, the implications to conventional protein production could be significant. An increase in alternate food protein does not mean a decrease in the industry share for traditional protein market. And additionally, as particular cuts of alternative proteins grow at different rates, the economics of conventional protein production becomes more difficult to manage. For example, as alternative ground beef, increases its market share, other conventional beef products such as steaks or roasts may need to generate increasing margins, making carcass balancing increasingly, difficult for, producers and processors. And of course, a lot of technology is still missing in this sector. So I think that's the main challenge.
The traditional one or the alternative one?
The alternative one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. On that note, you mentioned about, so are we going to say that we are creating a space for impact-based investment? Because how I see it is alternative food protein is basically going to be a more sustainable investment for investors, which in turn brings sort of an impact to the climate as a whole, like, so what are your thoughts about that, Gautam? Is investing into alternative protein is a space into the impact investment?
When you look at impact investing as a sector, the core premise is that the investment will essentially meet certain impact metrics. Now that might be around health or climate or a range of different areas of impact. When you look at the alternative protein sector, this is impacting an industry that it is disrupting an industry that today is 14.5% of global warming. It is animal agriculture today is the #1 cause of deforestation, of large ocean dead zones that kill everything within them, and of species extinction. The sector takes up north of 20% of our water, 30% of our land, contributes to 75% of our disease, uses up 80% of our antibiotics, and in the process, we kill between 70 to 80 billion land animals and between 1 and 2 trillion fish every year. So it's difficult to imagine a sector that might span a greater degree of impact metrics than the alternative protein sector does when it hits animal agriculture. Worse, all of these numbers in animal agriculture are going up and to the right. So a lot of folks, I think, look at alternative proteins and say, well, wouldn't it be nice to have these alternatives? And I think the thing that we need to realize is that when you get out to 2050 and the population doubles, or rather the population goes to 10 million and meat consumption doubles, alternative proteins are not a nice to have. The math for the planet simply doesn't work. If we don't do this, we will have a protein shortage. We will not be able to feed the population. And so if we do not do things differently, then we will hit a wall relative to the resources that we have available. And alternative proteins, when it comes to the food system, are among the best, most interesting, most compelling technologies to do so.
Great. I got my answer. Thank you so much, Gautam, for explaining.
And that's Sonny, and that's just 2050.
Yeah.
If we don't do something about it, as we move into the end of the century, when the population goes from then 2050, 10 million to 13 billion, nothing good is going to happen. Nothing good. So this is a problem that it's a necessity that we address. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is a thing that's going to be critically important if we can't feed people. There's going to be mass starvation.
Absolutely. I just want to know, what are the unicorns in this space? Because obviously I'm not very much knowledgeable in when it comes to the alternative protein space. So what are some of the unicorns and upcoming alternate food protein companies in the market? Who would like to take this first?
I have some names. I could share those if that's okay with you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So companies like Impossible Foods have a 7.8 billion valuation. Beyond Meat, more than 1 billion valuation. Upside Foods, Perfect Day, Moza Meat are some of the established unicorns in this sector. There are new alternative food companies in developing countries as well. And some of the recent developments have been with Float Foods, a Singapore food tech company that makes plant-based egg substitutes, announced a $1.6 million seed funding round. There is a plant-based chicken creator, Daring, it's called Daring, announced a $40 million Series B funding round, including an investment by musical artist Drake. And plant-based fast food chain Plant Powder Fast Food announced a 7.5 million Series A fundraise. Shanghai plant-based protein company Yva.ai Group International announced a $7.3 million in Series A funding. German pea milk maker Willi announced a 7.4 million Series A funding round. And plant-based bacon brand Hooray Foods announced 2 million in the seed funding among the others. And India, Blue Tribe Foods is a new alternate protein startup and has already gained traction in the supermarkets and online.
Wow.
So there's a lot,
There-
a lot of companies. Yeah.
there's a lot going on in this space. Gautam, over to you, please. You are on mute. Let me just.
Thank you. When you look at the most visible companies in the sector, the two most visible public companies are Beyond Meat and Oatly. So they're trading at about 10 billion in valuation. There's a series of unicorns that are behind them. The most visible of which is Impossible Foods, but Notco, which is a company doing plant-based dairy, using computational approaches, as it turns out, using machine learning and accelerating innovation, which also just achieved unicorn status. And so there's a number of these unicorns that are following behind. You may have seen that there was a round of $226 million for Motif Foodworks, which is one of our portfolio companies. There was a couple of other rounds north of 200 million in size, one of which was Nature's Find, which is actually using a microbe from Yellowstone Park to produce meat, from Califia Farms, which is doing plant-based milk. So this is the next set of companies that are either unicorns or about to become unicorns. And then as Vandana highlighted, I think with a lot of great examples, there's many companies following behind that with the next set of potential, I would say, unicorns, decacorns. What you want to see with a sector, if it is to develop well, is that you want to see every part of the ecosystem engaging. You want to see consumers trying the products, investors investing in the companies, lots of new startups coming up, incumbents making investments, and investors in the public markets then supporting those exits. And probably the most promising thing about the alternative protein space is that every single aspect of this of the ecosystem is engaging. The largest meat producers in the world now, every one of them has a plant-based meat brand. They don't even call themselves meat companies anymore. They call themselves protein companies at this point. So what is important to see is the underbelly of this sector where everybody is engaging, recognizing the writing on the wall. Whether you care about consumer sentiments, wanting to be flexitarians, whether you care about the planet, or whether you just see that technology is now at a point where these new types of foods are going to come up. I think there's very broad engagement, which is encouraging.
Wow, that's very encouraging for sure. Thank you, Gautam. Gary, over to you, please. Unicorns.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, as you know, I'm interested in AI and quantum computing, but the computational part of this is what's interesting for me, discovery, how we can really democratize the opportunity around the world. My concern is that, the good news is, as we've said many times, Sonny, and over the last 2 years, this Zoom, StreamYard mentality where we're really being able to get information out. I hear from people all over the world now. We're in 37 countries, as I said. And, part of the challenge is realizing that the problem exists and then doing something about it. So spreading the information out from our standpoint, that's really this creates the opportunity and puts the seeds in the soil for this thing to be able to grow. And I believe that that's coming, but more needs to be done about it. And we need to step up. I keep going back to this thing is stepping up to the level and some of the things that I'm talking about at the United Nations. But I think it's so critically important because we have these technologies, as Gautam and Vandana have said, we have some of the technologies out there, but the situation we have to have some support. I don't mean entitlement, but just support to be able to get the information out to those particular countries and those leaders to let them know that it exists, because it's such a huge challenge that's going to be in front of us, and we're developing those technologies to take care of it. On the other side, for the investors and for startups to understand these opportunities exist and focus on it. So, like at Penn State University, they have a huge agricultural group. I think it's the first one in the United States, actually.
Right.
But transitioning some of the educational institutions over to these types of technologies, so they can really curate those companies and curate those minds so that they move in those directions. But it's got to happen quickly, right? This isn't something that think about it. We're here we are in 2021. We don't have a lot of time. We have less than 30 years to be able to solve. This is a huge challenge to solve in a very short period of time. And education is critical.
Yes, absolutely. Once we understand how this is going to disrupt the traditional, then there you go. You've got the market. Okay, just conscious of the time. Let's just take some closing remarks. I'll start with Vandana with your closing remarks, and where can somebody find you? I think you mentioned in the beginning, but just it's okay.
Okay, the investor community is waking up to the massive social and economic potential of food and technology to radically remake our food systems.
Right.
This is a really, really, important factor here. The growth in this sector has signaled a lot of investors about the huge opportunities that lie in the alternate protein sector. And, for the sector to advance, some of the technology still has to be advanced, including manufacturing, processing, for texturing the proteins. But there are also other promising methods. There is a company called Redefine Meat, which is using 3D printing technology. The climate crisis, coupled with global food and nutritional security concerns, has positioned alternative proteins as a vital solution. At the outset, alternative proteins are less resource intensive compared to their conventional animal protein counterparts. While it was almost a decade-old industry, it has largely, grown in the past 2 years, because about 45% of the market share belongs to investments from 2019 and 20, which represents that at this growth rate, it will become one of the most, sought after food technologies. And I could be reached out on my LinkedIn handle or my website, www.convanto.com.
Thank you, Vandana. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gautam, over to you, please.
I would just say that it's very important for us to recognize the scale and the depth of the change that is ahead. So we have been engineering food, as it turns out, for a very long time.
Yeah.
We have just been doing it using food science and ingredients. And now we are engineering food using biotechnology and molecules. And what folks need to appreciate, that is a change that is as fundamental as the transistor was for the computing age. We are at the beginning of a huge transformation. I mentioned that we, with alternative proteins being 1% of the animal agriculture market, we are at the 1995 moment that the internet was for alternative proteins. Remember, if you're sitting and looking at the internet in 1995, there was no Google, there was no Facebook, there was no cloud. Artificial intelligence was a shadow of what it was. There was no voice internet. There was no Zoom. And so it gets very, very difficult to explain to someone sitting in 1995, staring at Yahoo, the directory, what Amazon Web Services is. It becomes very, very difficult to explain some of those things. And so as this industry evolves, we are going to see new products, new possibilities that are very, very difficult to talk about and to imagine because we simply don't have the vocabulary to do so.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gautam. Thanks a lot. Where can people find you?
Our website is goodstartup.com. You can find me there.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Gary.
Yeah. You know, Gautam brings back memories because I remember in 1993, I was doing some work with Sun Microsystems, and I had one of my engineers pull off all the websites, and I had all the websites on the internet was only that big on printer paper, and I said, "Why don't we have some easier way to be able to find things?" I remember, and here we are. So, but that's that kind of moment, and the situation is not talking about the problem. It's about creating the solution, you know, and it's about execution. So one thing I've learned over doing 17 companies is that it's about getting the stuff done. And where we are now is it's not like something that we might want to do or would be really nice. It's something we have to do in order to be able to survive as a race, because nothing good is going to happen. And we have a very short window of opportunity to be able to do it. And it's going to be a compounded problem. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited that groups like the United Nations are really taking this very seriously throughout. And but this is one of the challenges we have. It's not just this; it's global climate change. Nothing good's happening, and a lot of them, as we've said, are connected together. The more animals that we have, the worse the climate gets. So there are a lot of challenges. But you know, at the same time, the human race is resilient. The good news is we've now firmly understand that we have a problem, and now we've got to affect the solution to the problem. You can reach me, Gary Fowler, on LinkedIn. You can check me out. I'll be speaking at the UN on October 1st. It's public, so you'll be able to hear it. And I've written an article about this after my conversation with them about technologies for peace for the for this century. And I'm excited about it. You can reach me, Gary Fowler, on LinkedIn, Twitter. Check out my shows, including the Founders Report on VCTV.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Gautam, Vandana, for taking this time out and sharing your insights. Really valuable. And viewers, those of you like the show today, don't forget to press like button on this video and put your comments. And thank you so much and have a great day. I'm going to catch you again. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.